Imagine a standard commercial shipment arriving at a bustling commercial port. Thousands of green bananas sit stacked securely in temperature-controlled containers, destined for a quiet, unassuming fruit merchant in Glasgow. To the untrained eye, it is just another ordinary link in the global food supply chain. There are no blaring alarms, no panic drivers, and no obvious red flags. But buried meticulously beneath layers of silver foil and perfectly legal produce lies a staggering hidden economy. This is the story of a phantom. It is the case study of a man who transformed the unpredictable underworld of Scotland into a highly efficient, multinational corporate machine, operating completely invisible to the public eye. In the early 2000s, the name Jamie Stevenson carried a heavy, unspoken weight throughout South Lanarkshire. He was an established figure, yet he possessed an uncanny ability to remain just out of the reach of a definitive conviction. While persistent whispers connected him to a severe, fatal incident outside a Springburn pub in 2001, an unfortunate event involving a former close associatee, the legal case ultimately collapsed due to a sudden lack of witness testimony. Following this baffling mystery, Stevenson retreated further into the shadows. He actively avoided the flashy vehicles, social media presence, and public bravado that typically guarantee the downfall of his peers. When he finally did face the justice system in 2007, it was not for any physical misconduct, but for highly complex financial maneuvering. An exhaustive, surveillance-heavy investigation known as Operation Folklore resulted in a lengthy sentence for laundering over £1 million. At the time, authorities firmly labelled him as a senior architect of organised enterprise in Scotland. He served his time quietly, but his incarceration was not a deterrent. It was a period of intense strategic restructuring. When Stevenson walked free in 2014, the volatile nature of his early career had entirely evaporated. He clearly understood that true longevity required the calculated precision of a chief executive officer. Rebuilding his empire slowly, he replaced street-level unpredictability with airtight logistics, relying heavily on offshore accounts, legitimate business fronts, and a strictly vetted inner circle that included his stepson, Gerard Carbin. The new business model was completely devoid of public confrontation. It functioned exclusively on carefully forged invoices, discreet meetings in upscale hotel lobbies, and global supply chains. To local law enforcement, it appeared as though Stevenson had simply retired, fading into absolute obscurity. In reality, he was laying the meticulous groundwork for an unprecedented international network cone that would soon move millions in illicit goods right under the noses of border control, forcing investigators into a high-stakes game of chasing a ghost. How does a criminal enterprise scale its operations to rival the output of a legitimate pharmaceutical company without ever drawing the attention of local authorities? The answer was hidden nearly 400 miles away from Stevenson's traditional Scottish stronghold. Buried inside an unassuming grey warehouse nestled deep within an industrial estate off the A2, in Rochester, Kent. There was absolutely nothing remarkable about the exterior. No prominent signage, no unusual foot traffic, and certainly no reason for law enforcement to cast a second glance at the seemingly dormant property. But what investigators uncovered on June 12, 2020, would entirely redefine their understanding of modern illicit supply chains. When tactical units finally breached the facility, they did not find a chaotic den of street-level distributors. They walked into a meticulously organized, highly sophisticated manufacturing plant. The overhead lights hummed steadily, and the heavy pressing machines were still radiating heat from their recent use. This was not a rudimentary, small-scale setup. It was a staggering feat of industrial engineering. Inside the quiet unit, officers discovered heavy-duty equipment capable of churning out an astonishing 258,000 tablets every single hour. The sheer volume of production was dizzying. Tubs upon tubs of etizolame, a potent substance marketed as a cheaper, highly dangerous counterfeit alternative to Valiumware, perfectly packed, labeled and staged for immediate transit. By the time the meticulous search concluded, investigators had catalogued over 13.5 million tablets on site, with intelligence suggesting that nearly 28 million had already successfully entered global circulation. Yet, The physical machinery was merely a symptom of a much larger, chillingly corporate structure. As detectives sifted through the evidence at the scene, the true hierarchy began to crystallize. The clandestine facility operated with the rigid efficiency of a multinational corporation. A trusted associate named Paul Bowes was tasked with receiving the massive bulk deliveries of raw materials, while Stevenson's stepson, Gerard Carbin, managed the complex mechanics of the presses. Another key figure, Ryan McPhee, expertly navigated the logistics, quietly moving the finished product between safe houses, storage units, and transport vehicles. And presiding over this entire subterranean factory was Jamie Stevenson himself, directing the entire workforce from hundreds of miles away. He was not just facilitating transactions. He was projecting outputs, planning batches of 10 million tablets at a time, and coordinating the discrete rail transport of raw chemical powder by the Plan Kuluk, hundreds of kilograms. He even issued strict corporate-style directives to his lieutenants, demanding they monitor the warehouse staff closely to prevent internal theft. When law enforcement systematically dismantled the Rochester lab, they realized they were not simply shutting down a regional operation. They were gazing directly into the nerve center of a criminal logistics empire that had been masterfully engineered to operate in absolute silence. The sudden dismantling of the Kent factory should have been the fatal blow to the organization. On the very day the clandestine pill presses were silenced, law enforcement apprehended Stevenson across the River Clyde in Glasgow, ending his peaceful retreat. Yet, in a baffling legal maneuver that still confounds investigative experts today, he was shockingly granted bail. He was not deemed a severe flight risk, and within mere days, the architect of this vast underworld syndicate vanished entirely. But while the chief executive had disappeared into the ether, the multinational machinery he engineered continued to churn relentlessly. By September 2020, 3 months after the Rochester raid, the investigative focus shifted from domestic manufacturing to massive international importation at the bustling port of Dover. Every single day, thousands of refrigerated commercial containers passed through the docks, creating an endless sea of steel and complex logistics. For months, a highly specific shipping route had been heavily utilized by the network. 18 prior shipments had successfully navigated customs without a single delay, seamlessly blending into the legitimate global agricultural trade. But the 19th container, ostensibly packed with fresh South American bananas destined for a quiet Glasgow importer, finally triggered a subtle intelligence alert. Something deep within the routing data and the associated paperwork simply did not align. When Border Force officials broke the security seal and swung the heavy metal doors open, they were greeted by seemingly endless pallets of green fruit. To the casual observer, it was a perfectly standard, legal delivery. However, as officers methodically peeled back the front rows of the cargo, the meticulous corporate facade crumbled. Hidden behind the legitimate produce were dozens of densely compressed, foil-wrapped bricks. The painstaking extraction process revealed a staggering haul: 19 carefully sealed bundles containing 952 kilograms of high-purity contraband. Laboratory testing confirmed the illicit cargo at 73% purity, carrying an estimated street value of up to £76 million. The sheer logistical audacity of the operation was breathtaking. The official invoices pointed to a legitimate-sounding entity called Glasgow Fruit Market Limited. However, investigators soon uncovered that the listed director was a highly vulnerable individual with a completely clean record, entirely unaware that his identity had been weaponized as a corporate shield by a phantom. Even while operating as an international fugitive, Stevenson was still holding the reins of the empire. Intercepted digital communications later revealed his intense micromanagement of this exact delivery. His encrypted messages read like the risk assessment of a deeply anxious project manager, repeatedly expressing concern over random border inspections, customs delays, and potential financial losses. His paranoia was entirely justified. The Dover interception did not merely halt a single shipment. It effectively severed a massive transatlantic supply line stretching from the equator all the way to Scotland. The multi-million-pound harvest was lost, and the invisible mastermind was finally beginning to leave a traceable, undeniable, digital footprint. How do law enforcement agencies capture an invisible adversary? When a primary target strictly refuses to physically handle any illicit materials, aggressively avoids traditional lines of communication, and relies entirely on legitimate corporate fronts, standard physical surveillance often yields nothing but frustrating dead ends. However, by the early months of 2020, the seemingly flawless armor surrounding the Glasgow syndicate began to quietly fracture. The sheer, unprecedented volume of tropical fruit consignments arriving in Scotland had finally triggered intelligence alarms. Furthermore, a crucial operational misstep occurred thousands of miles away. David Bilsland, the supposedly legitimate director fronting the produce enterprise, was physically observed in a Spanish hotel lobby. He was not there on holiday. He was engaged in a highly discreet meeting with Jamie Stevenson. This single, silent encounter provided the essential catalyst for Police Scotland to initiate a classified, large-scale inquiry codenamed Operation Pepperoni. But to truly dismantle this deeply entrenched network, investigators needed much more than circumstantial proximity. They desperately needed access to the Phantom's internal boardroom. That access arrived in the spring of 2020, through a monumental, unprecedented breakthrough in modern digital forensics. Across the continent, elite underworld syndicates relied heavily on a specialized, heavily modified communication infrastructure known as EncroChat. Marketed strictly to a clandestine clientele as an impenetrable, military-grade fortress for secure correspondence, it provided a supposedly uncrackable vault for logistical planning. But when French intelligence successfully infiltrated these encrypted servers, the digital vault swung wide open. Global investigators suddenly found themselves staring directly at thousands of highly sensitive, unfiltered messages that rapidly stripped away the anonymity of Europe's most elusive figures. As dedicated analysts meticulously combed through the massive data leak, a highly distinct pattern began to materialize out of the noise. A specific user meticulously avoided using their real name, yet the digital timelines, geographic locations, and strategic directives aligned flawlessly with Stevenson's exact real-world movements. Two primary encrypted handles stood out in the digital wreckage: Elusive Rival and Big Tasty. Reading through these intercepted chat logs was remarkably akin to reviewing the daily internal communications of a multinational corporate executive. The messages were entirely devoid of the erratic emotion or slang, typically associated with street-level enterprise. Instead, they revealed a remarkably calm, highly calculated manager, methodically discussing international cargo drops, complex funding structures, and routine staff reshuffles. The scope of the conversations was breathtaking, confirming that the network extended far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom. There were explicit, detailed references to the high-capacity machinery operating in Kent, seamlessly intertwined with logistical planning for commercial containers docking in Spain, Ecuador, and Abu Dhabi. The digital fingerprints were absolutely irrefutable. Through his own meticulous need to micromanage every logistical detail from afar, the invisible architect had inadvertently documented his entire corporate structure. The very technology designed to guarantee his absolute silence had handed investigators the exact blueprint needed to bring his empire crashing down. When a high-value target slips through the fingers of the justice system, the ripple effect spans continents. Following his baffling release on bail in the summer of 2020, Jamie Stevenson completely evaporated. He left behind no forwarding address, no official departure records, and absolutely no financial footprint. For nearly 2 agonizing years he became a ghost traversing the globe, with intelligence whispers placing him everywhere from the sun-drenched streets of Barcelona to the luxurious expanses of Abu Dhabi. The National Crime Agency officially elevated him to their most wanted list, aggressively circulating his aliases and photographs across European transport hubs. Yet the mastermind remained hidden, attempting to silently orchestrate the remnants of his syndicate through trusted proxies. The elusive run finally concluded in February 2022, not in a heavily fortified compound, but on a quiet jogging path in the Dutch countryside. Acting on highly classified intelligence, local authorities moved in seamlessly, apprehending the fugitive without a single moment of resistance. The Phantom was finally back in cuffs, but the ultimate legal battle was just beginning. Extradited back to Scotland, Stevenson initially mounted a vigorous defense. He attempted to shift the entire weight of the illicit enterprise onto a former confidant and best man, Stephen Jameson. Entering a specialized legal defense of incrimination, he desperately tried to paint himself as a mere bystander. However, the courtroom walls rapidly closed in as his meticulously constructed corporate shield disintegrated from the inside out. One by one, his most trusted lieutenants, including Lloyd Cross, Ryan McPhee, and his stepson, Gerard Carbon, officially accepted their culpability. The prosecution systematically dismantled Stevenson's fabricated narrative by projecting the intercepted EncroChat logs directly into the official record. The court did not hear the chaotic rants of a street-level enforcer. They read the calm, structured directives of a senior logistics manager adjusting wages, complaining about customs delays, and micromanaging operational gaps from afar. Confronted with a pristine digital trail, airtight geographical timelines, and compelling visual evidence of the Rochester manufacturing facility, the defense shattered. Midway through the high-stakes trial, Stevenson abruptly abandoned the charade, formally changing his plea to guilty. The conclusion of the proceedings was incredibly quiet, lacking any dramatic outbursts. Yet it echoed with absolute finality. The presiding judge meticulously detailed how the orchestrator used his associates and business fronts as expendable pieces on a complex logistical chessboard. The initial judgment handed down a formidable 20-year sentence, which was later adjusted upon appeal to 16 years and 3 months, reflecting a single continuous course of conduct. Furthermore, authorities initiated severe prevention orders and rigorous asset recovery processes, ensuring the financial infrastructure of the empire was permanently dismantled. The man who nearly outsmarted international border controls through sheer administrative brilliance had finally met his match in the digital age. Now, we turn the investigation over to you. Did the final adjusted sentence truly reflect the staggering scale of this multinational corporate syndicate? Or did the invisible architect walk away with a lighter burden than the evidence demanded? Share your analytical insights in the comments below. We review every perspective. If you appreciate deep dives into the hidden mechanics of organized enterprise, ensure you subscribe and turn on notifications. There is always another shadow network waiting to be uncovered.